Okay. Cooperative Legacy Project interview number 62, January 11th, 2007. We're visiting with Aaron Glanzer, former board member of the Farmers Union Oil Company at Bridgewawter and former Cenex regional board member. Aaron, where and when were you born?
I was born in 1927, December 21st, out on the farm north of Freeman.
Okay. And what was the date? You gave me the date there.
Yeah.
Where was your family originally from? Glanzer sounds a little German, maybe.
Yeah, they came from actually the Ukraine. My grandparents. Yeah. Well, they were Germans, and Catherine the Great invited them up because they were good farmers into Russia, and they were there for 100 years. And then when the revolution broke out, a lot of them left Russia and came to America. My background really is Hutterite, with the Hutterite colonies, yeah. And when my grandparents came here, they homesteaded, and they never went back into the colony. But it's a Hutterite background.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that a? Did they talk about that much? Was that a big transition for them?
No, not really, and we still always had good relationship with the colony, and but we were called the Prairie people because we left the colony and homesteaded and then started farming on the prairie. So.
Okay. You have brothers and sisters?
Oh yes, I've got. There were 9 of us in the family. 4 brothers and 4 sisters. Of course, they aren't all alive anymore. 3 of them died.
Okay. And what did they do? Did they all stay around here, or did they scatter across
No.
the
My brother Paul, he's out in Virginia. He was a minister, and then he got interested in education, and so he lives out there. The rest of us were all around here, and we're all more or less farmers, except the youngest sister. She was a teacher all her life. She lives here in Freeman, though. Yeah, we all lived around here.
Okay. What was your father's name?
Joseph P. Glanzer.
Okay.
And my mother's name was Teresa Kleinsusser.
Okay. And what was your dad like? You want to talk about him a little bit?
Dad had very little education. He only had 3 years of grade school, and he was the youngest in the family. But he was quite aggressive. And in the 30s, when things were really bad, he started a fur business. He'd buy all kinds of furs and then resell them, and us boys would skin the skunks and the deer and minks and whatever he bought.
Was skinning skunks kind of a difficult process?
Well, it was a good paying job. He paid us 10 cents a piece, and we earned $10, $12 in one day at that time for a young kid. That was pretty good. But he saved the farm with that, and but it was tough. It was very tough.
Yeah. How about your mother? What kind of a person was she?
She was a very loving mother. Always, of course, with 9 children, always busy and hardworking, and she died fairly young, in her early 60s, of a heart problem. My dad lived to be 86, so.
Well, back in those days, there was a lot of work on the farm.
Oh yeah, a lot of physical work, and
a lot more than today.
Yeah, and of course, I was in with that. We milked cows by hand, took care of hogs, and then, of course, at harvest time, I started pitching bundles when I was too young alone, so 2 of us went together, and shocking cane, and shocking the grain and stuff like that. But we survived, and I never can complain. We always had enough to eat. Sometimes it was very, very simple. I know my mother sometimes just didn't have anything, so she took milk that we had and flour, and she made a pudding. It was good, and it satisfied our hunger. And we didn't have a weight problem. Yeah.
Did your your father have brothers or sisters that had stayed with the colony, or with the?
No, he didn't. They spread quite far, and actually some of my uncles I really never knew. They moved up to Canada, some, and so yeah.
Okay. So life on the farm was considerably different back in the 1930s.
Oh yeah, yeah, it really was. I mean, it was entirely different. I plowed with horses. Dad was one of the first ones to buy a Ferguson tractor, but sometimes he didn't have the money to buy the gas, so the tractor stood, and we plowed with horses, and we got it done. We didn't farm that terribly big, but still it was quite a bit, to farm about 2.5 quarters, 3.
Mm-hmm. Did you have dust storms around here?
Oh yeah. Yeah, them I remember very vividly. I know one dust storm came, and afterwards we went out, and the fences were under dust. It just covered everything, and the drought was really bad, and the dust storms, and partly our fault. I mean, we plowed and kept things black, and we learned, but it took a while.
Mm-hmm. Did have a big problem keeping the dust out of the house?
Well, when the dust storm came through, yeah, and of course houses weren't built like they are now. They weren't insulated. And that I remember. I mean, the parents would stock the stove at night, but it went out, and in the morning when you got up, there was ice in the pail with drinking water in it. I mean, but we had these down covers. They were warm. We never froze, I don't remember, but it was a different lifestyle.
Did you go to country school?
Yes, I went 8 years to country school. It was just a half a mile, so we walked it most of the time, and our school was a little bigger than some. There was 21 in the 8th grades. So in the class I was in, there was 4 of us that in that class, and I think I got a fairly good background in what I needed.
Mm-hmm. What was the name of the school?
Summit District 51.
Now, back in those days, I know Merlin was active in the YCL. Did you have that here too, the Young Citizens League?
No.
Okay.
Not that I know of. At least I wasn't involved in it.
Okay. And where did you go to high school at?
I went to Freeman Academy here at Freeman. I went 4 years there, of course, and graduated. And then I went 2 years to Freeman Junior College. That time the college was still up. And then I graduated from Bethel College, Newton, Kansas. Mm-hmm. And I taught school out at Kimball, South Dakota, but the first year I taught, I was drafted in the middle of the year. So in February I was drafted into the Army, and had to quit teaching.
Okay. What year would that have been then?
That was in 50. I went in at 52, so it was in the spring of 52.
Okay, so did you get overseas at all, or?
No, I went in as a non-combatant,
mm-hmm.
and so they put me in the medics.
Yeah.
And being I had a college degree with a lot of science, I became a medical lab technician at the Brooks Army Medical Center at San Antonio, Texas, and I worked for medical doctors that did research.
Okay.
So it was quite enjoyable to work with these doctors, because they weren't more interested in the Army than I was. But it was a good experience. And then when I got out of the Army...
they weren't like the doctors on MASH, were they?
No, they were entirely different. It was interesting what they did, and it was quite an eye-opener for me. They had all the burnt patients from not only the United States come to that hospital, and I'd have to walk through that ward, and see these young people.
You probably had guys from World War II there as well as...
That could be. I'm not sure. This was the Korean conflict that where I was, and I worked for Dr. Danzig that worked with the renal and fluid. So what I did, one of the jobs was to set up one of these dialysis machines, because that time it was big, and then I had to put in the right chemicals in the bath water to remove it. So she'll get it. I had a good experience in the Army. I was in 2 years, and then I got discharged, and I came home, and Marcella was my girlfriend. Then we got married.
Okay.
And her dad gave her 80 acres of land, and 80 acres he kept for themselves until they die, and then we get it. And so when I got that opportunity, I grabbed it. I loved farming, and we started farming. We farmed for about 45 years up in the Salem area.
Okay. Did you? Was that what you wanted to do when you were a kid? Did you want to farm?
No, I was sort of interested in going to med school, but it was just about impossible to get in unless you had straight A's.
Yeah.
It was right after a lot of soldiers came back, and I had a good strong B, but it wasn't good enough. So and then that's why I went to teaching then, and I love teaching.
What did you teach?
Science.
Science.
Yeah,
okay.
Math and science.
Let's back up just a little bit.
Sure.
Was when you were a kid, was your family active in any of the co-ops around here? Were there co-ops around here?
Yes. Like I mentioned, my dad helped set poles for the RA to come, and I remember the first time we threw a switch and we had light in the house. That was quite a deal. No, my dad wasn't really that involved in co-ops. We did 4-H. I was involved a little with 4-H, but not much. And we never went to a farmers union camp either.
Yeah.
It's,
when your dad was setting poles, where was that at?
That was in... it was just west of Silver Lake. They set the posts and strung the wires, and then of course we got somebody to come and wire the house. Of course, at that time all you had was outlets, so and lights. But that was a big step. Yeah,
people had a tendency to not maybe have wiring in their houses at that point because it's difficult to anticipate perhaps how many appliances they might eventually get.
Yes, and that always tickles me a little. The farmers wanted these big electric companies to bring them out electricity, and they thought, that's a lost cause, until they saw how much electricity farmers use. When we farmed, I ground my feed. I had a feed factory on the farm. I had so many things that my electric bill was pretty high. And they never anticipated that. Of course, now it's a little different. There are fewer farmers, but still, they're doing okay.
Fewer farms probably using more electricity.
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah.
I'm just kind of working through the questions here. Let's see. How about the World War II era? What do you remember about that? Do you remember Pearl Harbor?
Yes. Oh, very vividly. Yeah.
We're kind of bouncing around.
And I know I was just glued to the radio when we dropped the first atomic bomb. That bothered me a lot that we'd do that with a weapon like that, but. I remember World War II. A lot of people that I knew were drafted, and
Any of your siblings get drafted?
Yeah, I had 2 brothers that were drafted, but they went to alternate service because of our religious background. 3 of my brothers went, really. Well, my brother Clarence, he went into the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, and the other two brothers went as into alternate service.
What sort of effect did the war have on life out here on the farm?
Well, of course, things were short, things were rationed, even for some food, but
Better prices. You had better prices.
Yes, that's just what I was going to say. After the war in the late 40s, then, of course, the prices were out of this world. I mean, expenses were so low, and I think we got $3 a bushel for corn, things like that, and it was just unreal. I know a brother-in-law of mine, he had a good corn crop that year, and I think he bought a quarter of land and paid it from the crop that one year. I mean, it was unreal. And, of course, tractors didn't cost much. The first tractor I bought was a John Deere 60, and I paid $2,250 with a 4-row cultivator. So it was a different era.
Mm-hmm. How about kids? You have kids?
Yes, we have two children. Our daughter, Deb, lives in Old Town, Minnesota with her family, and then we have a son, Ron. He's in Newton, Kansas. They both graduated from Bethel College, where I graduated from, and Deb is doing very well. She's very aggressive. She works for Jostin, and she is up pretty high in that company.
Mm-hmm.
Has
Is
a
that
good
the company
salary.
that does
Rings and
high schools
that's
yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And our son just got a new job, which he just loves. He was hired to work with computers, and so he goes out. If an individual has problems with his computer, he does that. If a company wants to move their computers to a different building, he does that, or installs hardware, anything they want, he does, and he just loves it. And it's a good job, because he was looking for a job since he graduated from college, and nothing ever opened, so he just worked in the furniture factory and in the glass factory, and when this opened, he's alive now. He's really enjoying it.
It's important to
Yeah.
enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, our son Ron, he's single. Deb got married, and we have one grandson.
Mm-hmm.
Ice hockey, Minnesota ice hockey.
Is he a hockey player?
Yes, he just loves it, and
Big deal over there.
yeah, he's doing very well too. His dad is 6'5", and he's tall too, so well built. So he's a good ice hockey player.
Okay. Did any of them at any time aspire to farming? Or?
No. Ron is our adopted son, and he's quite different. And I was glad when he wasn't interested, because I don't think he could have managed a farm.
Mm-hmm.
But he's doing very well otherwise now. And Deb, of course, she was a very good student and got a business degree and got involved in that and has done very well for herself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How do you get involved with cooperatives?
Well, I always believed in cooperatives, and
what was it you liked about co-ops?
well, it's that you're dealing with yourself, and that if they make money, they give it back to you. So when we started farming, there's no question in my mind where to buy my inputs. I mean, I bought it from the co-op. I started out with Salem, and then I did switch to Bridgewawter after a few years. I don't know really why. They were about the same, and I always was treated good with co-ops, and I just believed in co-ops. I remember one time a local from Bridgewawter, he came out and he wanted to sell me some gas. And I told him, I'm sorry. I said, you're talking to the wrong man. I believe in co-ops, and I'm going to stay with co-ops. He got so mad at me, he called us communists and whatnot. But I stayed with co-ops, and of course then I became a board member. I was a board member for 12 years, I think 5 or 6 was a chairman.
Mm-hmm. When were you elected to the board?
Oh boy. Well, it must have been in the 70s, I think. Yeah, something like 70s.
Okay. And what kind of issues were you dealing with on the board there back in those days?
Well, there was rapid growth, and looking back now, I think the most important thing that a board can do is get a good manager, one that believes in the co-op system, and we floundered a little with that. You had to keep up with it, and you had to get the equipment that you needed, and that was expensive. And one manager we had sort of was a little afraid to do that. But then later on, we got managers that really did good for us.
Okay. Were there some good people you worked with during those days?
Oh yeah, yeah. And one of the things at the co-op we were, I think the board was pretty unified in saying, hey, you're going to buy from Cenex and stay with it. And they followed through on that pretty much. One of the things I've seen then later on, when you hire a manager, you stay out of managing the business. You let him do it. And I've seen co-ops where the board actually was trying to run the co-op. That don't work. So give him the reins, give him guidance and that, but let him be the manager.
Okay. What was the most difficult issue you had to deal with?
Oh boy. I think the most difficult was just coming out and telling the manager to resign.
Yeah.
That was difficult. He had a family, and but he just wasn't doing it. He was there a number of years and wasn't making any money for us, and it just didn't work, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Was this a competitive environment around Bridgewawter?
Well, yeah. Mostly, we got some competition from Emory, mm-hmm. and of course, Bridgewawter and Salem co-ops overlapped some, and and in the south, of course, there's Freeman. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about were you on the board at all during the period in the 70s when petroleum prices went way up and there were some shortages?
Yeah.
How did you deal with that at Bridgewawter?
Well, I don't quite remember the details, but I know there were some that left, started buying some other places because they'd get a little cheap or something like that. It was difficult. Mm-hmm. But the majority stayed with us.
Was Cenex always able to supply the needs?
I don't recall that we ever were out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when were you elected to the Cenex board?
1987. It's interesting. We went out of livestock in '87, and I didn't have no hogs. We raised quite a few hogs and cattle, and I didn't know what to do with myself in winter. So we had a board meeting, and one of the field men was there, and I knew that the managers were very unhappy with the director that was on there now. And so I just casually said, hey, do you think I could beat him? And just a smile on his face, because they can't get involved, told me go for it. And so I did. So I first started campaigning in January. That was in late December. And in February, I think, was the annual meeting at that time, instead of December like now. And so all I did, I wrote out my resume as to what all I was involved in, farming and that. And I think there was a lot of snow or blizzards at that time that I couldn't really, I only visited 2-3 co-ops. But I did have a hospitality room, and a lot of them came and talked to me, and I was elected. Mm-hmm. So I was pretty happy about that. And stayed on 9 years, and then they told me they didn't really tell me, but I knew that they sort of had an understanding that if you reach a certain age, you don't run again.
Okay. Did you have any role models of how you wanted to behave as a director, and anybody you admired the way they were serving?
I didn't really know the Cenex directors that well, but so I really don't think so. I sort of flew by the seat of my pants.
You ended up going out to a lot of local co-op meetings?
Yes, I try to make that a point to go to as many as I could. You weren't supposed to go unless you were invited.
Okay.
But sometimes I went, even if I wasn't invited. But I liked that. I like to go and visit with the managers and give them a report what Cenex. I felt that was important, that they need to know what their regional is doing. And so I did quite a bit of that. And Richard Trapphagen, the other director, he took the northern part more, and I took those around me more.
What did you do out west? Did you go West River much?
Not much. Gregory they invited me all the time. I went out there, and I think one year I was invited out to Lead. I think it was Lead or Sturgis. I'm sorry, Sturgis. So, but otherwise I didn't. It was quite a ways to drive. I did go out as often as I could when they had director's workshop at Lead. And I enjoyed that. I met a lot of young people that I felt would make very good leaders in their co-ops.
What sort of issues were you dealing with at the regional level during those years?
Well, when I got on the board, Noel Estison had just been made CEO.
That would have been just after Darrell retired.
Yes, and of course they were losing money. So I remember the first few meetings I went to, Noel says, this year we got to make $12 million. And Leon Westbrook and some of the other staff, they thought he was shooting a little too high. Well, we just about made that. And he turned, I feel that Noel Estison turned our co-op around. He gave us back our co-op. We were in pretty serious condition. And the next year it comes back, well, he says, this year we're going to make $100 million. We didn't reach that, but he had goals, and he had ways, and he led us in the board in a direction that he could achieve a lot of those. He was a real good CEO.
Okay. During those years, Cenex did do some acquisitions of other businesses.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that process a little bit? How much was the board involved in that, or do you just ratify it?
We did some of it. The biggest thing that we really worked a long time on is the merger of Land O'Lakes, Cenex, and Farmland. And that didn't work out. That fell through. Yeah. But otherwise, whenever there was something that we thought we should get into, we would go after it. And some things, for example, drilling for oil was very good for us, but not anymore. It became so terribly expensive because of environmental issues, and we didn't hit the gushers, you might say, and that. So Noel came and recommended that we get out of it, and we did sell that. So, yeah, we were sort of flexible. Some things worked, some did not. Transportation was always a difficult one for us, and we were losing money. And Noel Estison, well, he allowed it, but it wasn't him. It was the guy that, I don't remember his name, that was the head of the transportation. He suggested that we buy another trucking company in Iowa. I questioned that, but we went ahead with it, and then, of course, in a few years, we got rid of it. Yeah. It just did not work.
Yeah. Darrell Moses, and when I interviewed him, talked about one of the things he was proud of was the working relationships with the other regionals like Land O'Lakes, probably
Yes.
something like Ag Reliance.
Yeah.
You want to comment on how that worked out?
Yeah, that worked very, very well, I thought. And, of course, in the back of our minds always was, should we become more involved? Should we merge?
Mm-hmm.
We did quite a bit of work with farmland. But I don't know, there was quite a bit of difference in our philosophy and things. And
Culture, I guess.
yes, culture would be a better word, yes. And, of course, we owned McPherson Refinery. We had that together with several other co-ops, and then we wanted to buy out the whole thing, and we did buy out some, but I can't think of the co-op now out east here that weren't going to sell, and so they still own, I think, 15% or something like that. Mm-hmm. But that's been pretty good for us. But these refineries, what it costs to keep them up is unreal.
Yeah, being up to date.
Yes,
As far as,
taking out sulfur out of diesel fuel and everything. That was.
They pretty much, well, you've been off the board for a while now, but
Yeah.
they're pretty much as modern as they could get.
Yes. I've been trying to keep up with that, yes. At Laurel, Montana, that one is really up to par, and they're doing very well. And yeah, and the one down McPherson too. I think I don't know how many millions they spent to upgrade them, and yeah, they're very good refineries.
What about other directors that you worked with besides Richard? Were there any that impressed you a lot?
Well,
Elroy Webster, was he chairman?
yes, he was chairman, and when I got on, and another director from out west, we had enough. We were a split board. I mean, let's face it. There were some that were very strong Farmers Union. Anything that Farmers Union would tell them, they'd want to pass. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there were some of us, including me, that felt, hey, we are on the Cenex Regional Board. We have to do what's best for Cenex. Mm-hmm. And that caused quite a bit of friction. And so it was a good board. I can't say that I didn't like any of them, but we did have difference of opinion, and we were split on issues.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Were you still on the board when the discussions started with regard to the merger with Hart Estates?
No.
Okay.
No, I was off the board
Who
at that.
replaced you on the board?
Well,
because they ultimately thinned down the merger. To
what happened is they felt South Dakota. South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, they were one district. And then they felt that Nebraska should be a district. Nebraska, Kansas, then Oklahoma should be a district by themselves. And so they felt that they should have director, and the director from Nebraska.
Oh, okay, so that's what happened when you went off the board.
Yes.
Somebody else was.
Yeah.
For a while, then Richard was the only South Dakotan.
Yeah, that was quite a struggle because. There were some on the board, well, the two Montana directors, they saw that they were over-represented, and so they had Arizona, and they had Colorado, and then they even had Kansas for a few years, and it didn't make sense to me. So when we changed that, then, of course, the whole thing was different. Mm-hmm. The directors, and they're keeping that up, which is I feel is very good. This year, the West lost one director. They only have one now.
Okay. Let's talk about cooperatives in general. How would you assess the current status of co-ops in South Dakota as you observe?
Very good, but sort of struggling a little. We're living in a different environment. I always was encouraging mergers, but not all mergers work out for the best. I found that out, but you can't be too small. Now Bridgewawter, I was amazed. They're still all alone, and they're a very small cooperative, but when I talked to the directors out in Portland, in December now, they said, we got to look. We just can't do it anymore alone. So they have been talking to Freeman and also to Salem. Mm-hmm. So it depends on how it's done. It has to fit. You have to have a good manager. But I think that it needs to be done in most cases. That they have to merge, and I think the regional, I'm not sure, but I think now they're giving breaks to volume, which we used to not do.
Yeah. Yeah, now there's also the issue that probably came up for oil companies more after the merger with Harvest States, and that is something known as regionalization. Do you have any views on that? Where the local co-op trades their equity into the regional? And
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, and there are, I think Merlin told me that is now about 25% of the system.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that happened after I left.
The locals only have an advisory board then, and the manager is hired and fired by the regional.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm. Huh, that's different.
Yeah.
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 I know that a manager can make such a big difference. I knew Daryl, what's his last name now? He was a manager here at Marion for 1 year, and then he went to Africa, to Ethiopia, with ACDI Boca. And I went to Ethiopia twice to teach co-op directors. And I met him there, and I knew him real well. I knew him from here. And then when he came back after 2 years from Ethiopia, he had a co-op in northern Iowa. And the regional man wanted him to go out to Gillette, Wyoming. He just said, you're the man, they need you out there. It's a big co-op, and they were losing money, just losing money. So Daryl finally considered it, and he met with the board out there, and he says, listen, if I come here, I'm going to be the manager, and I'm going to do what I think is right. And they finally accepted him and said, okay. That first year, he made $500,000 locally. And what he got back from the region, I think he made about $1 million. They just couldn't believe it. And I just met him out at Portland. Now I says, Daryl, he says, how are you doing? He said, well, we made $1 million locally, and we're getting $1 million from the regional. But they had bought nothing from Cenex, from the regional. And he's buying everything from the regional. They're still out there, being they have oil wells and whatnot, they still don't promote or sell ethanol. Maybe that'll have to come sometime.
That is also true with some of the co-ops in Montana.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I know I drive through there on vacation, and I sometimes find it difficult to find ethanol blend fuel.
Yeah,
out there.
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That probably is going to change.
Well, yeah, I hope it does, and I don't know. I've been trying to keep up with this, but I read an article in Argus Leader the other day that said, well, if all these ethanol plants are going to go, corn's going to go up to $5 a bushel. Well, that's fine, but what will happen to the meat industry then? I don't know. But now they're talking of making ethanol from switchgrass and whatnot, which has a possibility. I still think we also need to have cars that are hybrids and things like that.
More economic and efficient in use of gas.
Yes.
Maybe we like big cars too much in the United States.
Yeah, we do. I'm one of them too.
Okay. You mentioned doing a couple of projects in Ethiopia. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, I represented Cenex on the ACDI board. And then, of course, Boca, the two merged. And with that, I went to Russia twice. Once the board went just to explore the possibility of starting a farm credit system. And we had a retired banker there for a year, and that was very interesting. The second time I went there, there was a director, I think it was from, I can't think of his name now either, from Land O'Lakes, I believe it was, and we went there to start a grain growers association.
Okay.
And
was this right in what's now Russia, or?
yeah, this was it was east of the Black Sea.
Oh, okay.
Krasnodar was the city we were in, and that took root. And I don't know how it is doing now, but they did form a grain growers association. And then they asked me to go to Ethiopia twice, a month at a time, to teach co-op directors. And that was interesting. Interesting to see that country. But see, Ethiopia had a co-op system that was very good before the revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And when the
communists... when Haile Selassie was killed.
Yes. And then, of course, when the communists came, they destroyed it all. And then now, in 91, 92, they are starting to rebuild it. And it was a good situation. The Ethiopian government requested, and the United States. So when I went there, I mean, there was no restrictions on me. And you volunteer your time, but they pay your expenses. And it's an experience. We had between 50 and 60 directors, co-op directors that came, and the classes lasted a week. So we went through a lot of co-op directors, and the co-op is really taking off. The regional co-op, which I call the regional, I don't know what they called it there, but when they started, they bought a tractor with a disc plow. See, they still plow with ox and with sticks, and they brought up all these little rocks, and this plow covered them, and the farmers were just excited about it. So they bought one of them, but the farmer had to pay before they went out to do it. Well, that first year, they had to give so much money back because they couldn't get it done. The latest I heard, they have 5 tractors now. And the co-op is doing quite well. They also formed a co-op that I wasn't involved with, but I sat through some of the sessions, a coffee growers association. Yes. And, you know, these farmers are so small. They maybe farm 10, 15 acres. The government owns the land. They rent it from the government. And so when they need fertilizer, they don't need tons. They just need very little. And they were gouged. And then when they sold their stuff, if they had some of the grain or whatever to sell, they had so little again. So when the co-op came in, it really took off, and it's very... It
makes a difference where they sell, too, whether they sell out in the country or they can take it to a city.
Yes, that's true. Of course, Ethiopia, it's Addis Ababa, the capital, and Nazareth. That area through there is farming land, and the rest of it is, a lot of it is mountain and pasture and things like that. But the poverty of the people, it's unreal.
Was there some famine going on?
Not in the region where it was, and I didn't think there was any place, but they were still, as poor as they were and everything, they were still at war with Eritrea. That had broken away from Ethiopia, and now they're at war with Somalia, I understand. Yes. Yeah. But it was a good experience. They were very good people to work with, and it was very interesting.
Did it seem like there was a lot of military presence?
Not in the cities, but I saw truckloads that just had these stock trucks and full of young people at home that... They didn't have a draft, but if you didn't enlist in the Army, there's no way you could get a job. Nobody would hire you, it seemed like. And so a lot of young people went into the Army.
Mm-hmm. Was it basically a Christian area where you were at? Because there's apparently a mix.
Yeah. There were, the classes I had, there were always about maybe 5, 6 that were, what word am I using for? They weren't, they were... I can't think of the Muslims, yeah, because we'd respect their wishes. So sometimes when they had prayer or something, we'd quit an hour earlier at noon so they could go say their prayers. But most of them were of the Christian faith. it was interesting. And we, the second time I went there was a guy from, I don't know what organization, and they were looking for a place to support. And so we went to a hospital where there were young mothers living out in the country that could not give birth. And some of them died, but some of them, after 4 or 5 days, gave birth, but their womb was ruptured. Mm-hmm. And so they couldn't control their bladder. And then a lot of them, the husbands just took them back to their parents and unloaded them and went off. It was sort of cruel, but not all of them. There were some. And this hospital would, if they'd get there for free, they would have surgery and repair that, and then they were okay, and they went back to some to their husbands. So that was interesting. There were so many things that I flew to Lalabella one weekend.
Oh, do they have some sort of a unique church there?
Oh, they have 11 of them. 11. That the king at that time, that was about 800 A.D., that the king felt he had a vision of God, and he hewed them out of solid rock. And the Christians fled up there because of persecution. And so that was a very poor area because it was all mountainous. But those churches were unique, very small, some of them, but there was a couple of them that were pretty large.
Yeah, there's a belief on some people's part, including, I guess, the people there, that the Ark of the Covenant is one of them.
Yes, I didn't get to see that. There is a city that believe they have the original Ark of the Covenant, and it's interesting. The story was told that they always have a priest that guards it, and one of the priests ran away. So they caught him and brought him back, and this time they chained him so he couldn't run away. But it's a very interesting history. Of course, even in the New Testament, they talk quite a bit about Ethiopia and the Queen of Sheba from Ethiopia that came. And now they believe that the Queen had a son from King Solomon. And Solomon wanted him to come back to take his place, and he refused. He said he wants to stay in Ethiopia, and it's a long story, and so he disowned him. So we have no record of it in the Bible. That's their story.
There were some Jews there that have ultimately ended up settling, I think, after the revolution up in Israel, I think.
That could be. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But
okay. That's an interesting experience for you.
It's really is. I do it again. I did go to Romania. I went there alone, and they wanted me to explore the possibility of starting a co-op. But that I felt was a waste of my time, because Romania is such a, I don't know what to say, but if you can get by with it, you do it. It's so.
Yeah. Well, they're going into the European Union, aren't they, or have they?
I'm not sure. That could be, but after communists left, of course, then they rearranged the land and they gave it back to some of them. And of course, the pieces of land were so small that the larger farmers either bought it or rented it. And but it had possibilities, but you can't. In 3 weeks that I was there, you can't do much. Yeah. I did meet with farmers and some leaders, and it was a waste of my time. But it was interesting.
But you would feel very strongly that the ACDI VOCA programs are worthwhile?
I think so. I think so. It's you don't get paid, but your expenses are paid. So you volunteer your time. And what I've seen happen, yes, I think it is. And a lot of the money, most of the money comes from U.S. aid. I don't know how much of it is done now, but I know Cenex always paid in some, and I think most regionals did. But
okay. Let's bounce back here to the United States. How important do you think cooperative education is?
I think that's quite important. I think it's very important that farmers and people that really know what cooperatives are, how they work, and why we exist. In the Bridgewawter area, I thought that farmers were quite loyal to their co-op, most of them. I don't see that quite in the Freeman area here. I see too many cars up at Casey's, and it is a temptation, especially, if there's 4 or 5 cents difference a gallon, but I don't think they realize the difference between Casey's and Ampride, Cenex.
You think, as a part of this project, I'm interviewing people from a lot of different kinds of cooperatives, including rural electrics, telephone, so on.
Yeah.
Do you think there's enough cooperation between cooperatives? Or are they just kind of existing but not talking to each other a lot?
Well, I really don't know how to answer that. I know at the regional level they're always trying to work not only with co-ops but with other organizations if they can, if they feel it benefits the co-op or the regional. I think maybe more could be done in the local area, but I can't really say.
Yeah, okay. What do you think the biggest challenge facing co-ops today is?
Well, to me, there has to be change. You have to change with the times. You can't say, well, this is who we are and we're staying here. And I think Cenex has always done that. I know there was quite a discussion, quite a battle when we changed. I wasn't on the board at that time, but when they changed from the shield to the Cenex sign that we have now. Yeah, that was quite a battle. And one of the things that Noel Essison came with is that it was quite cumbersome to have a trade name, Cenex, and Farmers Union Central Exchange cooperative name. And so the board, and we were split just about half and half on that. We came with it, and we had a lot of opposition to that because I seen some local co-ops come to the annual meeting that I had never seen there before just to be able to vote. One of the things that was quite humorous to me, and I don't know who the man was anymore, he got up and really was against it, but in his long speech that he had, not once did he use the name Farmers Union Central Exchange. He always used the trade name Cenex. And I thought to myself, hey, that's where I come from. And even now, this Cenex sign, a lot of people don't even know it's a co-op. And they'll buy from us, and of course now they always had a credit card, Cenex credit card, a Visa.
Yeah.
And so you have to change.
Yeah.
But I think the thing and there's a danger of that, is you got to remember who you are. You can't say, well, we're going to change, and then pretty soon lose your values and the reason why you came into being.
Yeah. I remember when I moved to South Dakota, Cenex was using the slogan, where the customer is the company. We have a situation, for example, there are 3 places that sell Cenex fuel in Huron now. Not a one of them is a co-op.
Well, yeah.
So it only means they're getting fuel from the regional.
Yeah. That's true of Sioux Falls too.
Yeah.
Get and Go,
Peter,
I think.
And Rapid City.
Yeah, and I think Cenex actually bought the C-stores in Sioux Falls, but they weren't making the money that they felt they should, except on gasoline. Yep. And so they sold that off and still retained the gasoline part of it. That's a tough situation because that's competitive.
Yeah.
It's but they're trying to promote it now out there, and I'd seen one ad once, the Cenex Man advertisement on television.
Yes.
I don't know how much of that they're going to do, and I wonder what kind of returns they'll get from that. I don't know, but it's something they're trying. they were Leah and Westbrook was quite excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
Okay. You retired what year now?
I retired in 96.
96.
Yeah, after 9 years.
Mm-hmm. So what have you been doing since then? You moved to Freeman.
Yes,
here.
I moved to Freeman because this is where I grew up. This is where I went to school.
Mm-hmm.
I put up a shop away from the house here. It's a few blocks, 5 blocks, and I started doing woodwork.
Okay.
I built that table there. I built these 2 showcases, and I had to have something to do. Mm-hmm. I went for coffee once or twice, and that wasn't my thing.
You never got into golf or fishing a lot.
I went fishing. We had a camper, but at our age now, we've cut back on camping quite a bit. But I just enjoy. Now this year, I'm cutting back on the woodwork too. It's been quite expensive, especially to heat a fairly big shop. Mm-hmm. And I didn't sell much. I sold a few things, but I donated most of it to our relief sale up in Sioux Falls, Minn Kota relief sale.
Okay.
And I just enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun and gives me a purpose for living. Now I'm into something else. I read books.
Okay.
So I'm just on my, I think, 3rd book that I read. My son-in-law gave me 2 of them, and it's very interesting. I love them. Okay. And you gave me one, so I got something else to read.
Yes. Well, I've just been reading a book that I'd recommend to you. It's a book on the life here in the United States during the first few months of World War II by Alistair Cook.
Do you have a piece of paper I can...
Yeah, I can tear a little piece off here.
Could you write that down for me, please?
Yeah.
I read another book that was just fantastic, I thought, and that is on politics by Jim Wallace. Mm-hmm. He edits the Sojourner magazine.
Yes.
And I agree with his philosophy a lot, and so I enjoy that book, and I get their magazine. I always read that from cover to cover. It's it's a good organization, I feel.
Mm-hmm. What, you're active in church here too? Or?
Yeah, I was very active in the local church, but then I also was chairman or president of our district conference for 4 years, and I was on the Bethel College board for 12. So I've been very active. I've been very active in farm organizations too. I was on the now don't come to me. Farm credit system. I don't know what it was called now. For a few years up at Salem, and a few other boards like that. I enjoy that very much.
Yeah. Okay. What kind of advice would you give someone today who wanted to become involved in some of the sort of things? Maybe to either involved in cooperatives, or maybe somebody who was thinking about maybe doing one of those projects over in Africa or Asia?
Well, I sure would encourage him. I feel that we need good leaders in our co-op system, but I feel that they need to get a pretty good background. You can't just go and become a manager overnight. It takes time, or even to be a good director, it takes a while to get your feet wet and to see what had happened.
It can be a little bit time consuming.
Yes, that it can, very much so. If you were a full-time farmer, it'd be very hard. See, I was on the Cenex board when I was retired. I went out of livestock. I still farmed. You had to farm, and then the last term I had, I sold my machinery. I could fill out that one term. I knew I would not run again because of my age, and so I wish I'd have got involved in Cenex earlier. I was getting up there when I ran for it, but was a tremendous experience for me. I'd encourage anybody that really is interested in that and believes in co-ops to go that way if they can.
Mm-hmm. Would you describe yourself as an optimist or a pessimist?
It's an interesting question. I'm pretty optimistic about most things. Sometimes world situations are, they drag pretty hard on you, but I feel that, especially when it comes to farming, it has a future. I don't quite see some things. There's a farmer up at Canastota by the name of Randall, and I just read in the other paper that he got $1.4 million in government subsidy. I don't know why a person wants to do that. The young fella that we sold our farm to, we sold it privately because we wanted him to have the quarter with the buildings, and then we have 3 other quarters he rents from us. Mm-hmm. He's farming pretty big, but he does a very good job, and he does it without too much hired help. He must farm about 2,000 acres or something like that, which to me is big enough, I feel, but who am I to say? I just, I think there's a future. I mean, we'll always need food, and it's farmers have subsidized the food industry for too long. I think we need to get a fair return. And I would like to see it so that we don't need subsidy from the government. I feel that we have a good product, and that should deserve a good price so that we can live. But it's so different now.
Is there anything else you would like to talk about that I haven't asked you about?
No, not really. I'd have to think about that a little, but I enjoy my retirement years. I'm active, and I'm not that much involved in many things now, but that's okay. And it's been a good life for me. And for my wife, my wife is very active too. She's had health problems this past year, but she volunteers up at the Exeter shop here and quite a bit, and so many other places in church and everything. She sings, used to sing in the choir and things. And the main thing is to keep active, do something. Just sitting around and doing nothing. That's not me. Or my wife. Yeah.
Okay. We've been visiting with Aaron Glanzer. Thank you for participating in the Cooperative Legacy Project.
It's been a pleasure. 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 Pleasure.